Well, welcome back to Again Show. I'm here with my friend Paul Pomfrey. Welcome, my friend. How you been doing?
I've been doing well. And
Of
yourself?
course, of
How have
course.
you
I'm
been
doing
doing?
good. Listen, it's always a pleasure to see you. Whenever you and me would come together, it's always fire in the air. I can, I can't wait to challenge you. I love to push your button so that you can tell the viewers what they don't listen, what they can hear or they don't hear from the mainstream media. And of course, a lot of things are going on in our media. You don't We don't have to be exactly one, two, three, whatever you think you can express yourself here. This is a free platform where we don't receive any money from the donors that control the way we should talk. We speak our mind here. And again, welcome to Gen TV. This is Talk to Me with my friend Paul Pomfrey. Is our analyst. And always come straight and speak the truth to power. Okay, my friend. So I want to start this conversation. With what's going on in the news. Judge Jackson, Ketanji Brown is actually about to be confirmed, and the Republican side has been a lot of fight. You've seen some Republican like Ted Cruz and his crew. They say good stuff about Ketanji Brown, but in the end, they will say, but I cannot vote for you. Luckily, we have people like the Republican Senator Mitt Romney, who was saying, I intend to vote in support of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmation to be an associate justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. That's his statement after reviewing Judge Jackson's record and testimony. I have concluded that she is well qualified jurist and a person of honor. While I do not expect to agree with every decision she may make on the court, I believe that she more than meets the standard of excellence and integrity. I congratulate Judge Jackson and her expected confirmation, and look forward for continuing to serve our nation. Do you see that as a fair statement? Knowing what's going on, there's been a lot of contention going on. Do you think that was a fair comment, fair statement? Should we always fight or deny somebody a nomination just because he's from the other side?
Well, I think it's not really that the most important question should be asked about a Supreme Court potential justice. I think a question probably much more relevant is, does she believe that a corporation is a human being? Because, in fact, when they passed the 14th and 15th Amendment in the Constitution to basically say that Black people were human, those amendments to the Constitution was used to try to claim that a corporation is a human being and should have all the rights of a human being. Now, the crazy part about that is if a corporation does something that kills someone, who goes to jail? Who, in fact, pays the penalty? I mean, obviously, if a human being does kill someone in an unlawful way, they could be put in jail. But a corporation, so that means it takes away the responsibility of the people who run the corporation.
But is this to
But
say that the people should not have corporation? Because
I think that in fact you can have all the corporations you want, but they should not be defined as a human being.
Okay.
So that, in
You have a,
fact,
you have a
people
point.
who run the corporations, who make decisions that may kill people, should be held accountable. That their decision caused people to lose their lives, and that they should be held accountable to murder just like anybody else should be held accountable for murder. But you have a corporation that's driven by greed make decisions that could cause all kinds of danger. Like, for example, OxyContin. How many people lives were destroyed because a pharmaceutical company wanted to increase their profit and make billions of dollars off of other people suffering? But no one in that corporation was held directly criminally liable because the liability was put against the corporation, not the people who made the decision. No corporations make decisions on itself. They're human beings who make decisions on behalf of a corporation. And so if you make the corporation equal to being a human being or a citizen of the United States, then you've now put a buffer between the people who make decisions for corporations from
But
being
but, but
criminally held
honest, but
responsible
when you
for those decisions.
but I think yeah, usually I kind of disagree with you, but on that particular point, I think you are absolutely right. But if you think a little bit further, with that argument, the United States itself, it operates like a corporation, and let me explain. Or even let's see, outside the United States, NATO, one of the most strongest ally of the United States, NATO. When NATO went and destroy and bomb, um, Libya or Afghanistan, and
Yes,
there was the Security Council and the UN. They sent letters to whoever was the top of NATO at the time, talking about the investigation of NATO, because they were accused for war crime.
correct.
But they may say, you know what, I saw your letter. I understand what you're trying to do, the investigation, but just understand that we cannot be accused of war crime. And it's so ironic that right now, when you see the hell that they're raising on Russia for what Russia is doing with Ukraine, then you kind of wonder, isn't the same thing that NATO have been doing
Yes.
around the
Well,
world?
I was responding to your question about her being selected, Mitt Romney's comment about
Yeah.
Judge Jackson becoming a member of the Supreme Court. And my question, my response to that was, I feel that anybody who should be going through this process should be asked a simple question. Do they believe a corporation is a human being? Because the Supreme Court took a decision basically claiming the 14th Amendment as what qualifies a corporation to be a human being under the US law. And so that means that when individuals make decisions in a corporation that can affect human life, that can affect people losing their property, etc., that those human beings will not be held accountable for the decision they made, because the only group that can be held accountable is the corporation, as if that corporation was the actual being that made a decision. It didn't. It was human beings that made the decision. And so they should be held accountable for the decisions they make. And too often they are not. And this is why I feel that a much more legitimate question should be asked to any candidate who's opted to get on the Supreme Court bench is, do they believe corporations are human beings? Because it's ironic that they would have taken a part of our Constitution in the United States that gave African Americans, human beings, the first right to be considered by law as human beings, and spreaded it over to the corporations, as if corporations has ever had any characteristics of any kind of a human being. So the process went as it often does. It stays away from really relevant questions that's being asked, because to ask those relevant questions would mean you would judge a potential candidate for the Supreme Court.
But should that question determine, because those are the laws that was made, whatever, I think she was probably not even born. Of course that you want to know a position based on that, but should that be a defining uh, 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 reason for somebody to say that it's not going to vote for her or nominate her for her for to be the justice?
And that may be true. But my point is, I'm looking out for the interests of people in this country in the future, because there will be other cases where a corporation has done things to harm large numbers of people, and that the individuals who made that decision within inside that corporation not be held accountable, because they're going to put the charge against the corporations and not the actual people who made the decisions. So that creates a buffer where people out of greed can kill, maim, destroy lives of large numbers of human beings and never be held accountable, because the accountability is really pushed onto the corporation itself.
Absolutely. I
So
mean,
that to me is a very serious point that should always be brought up for anybody who's coming on the Supreme Court. And if they say that they believe corporations should be considered human beings, that should be an automatic disqualification, in my
well,
opinion.
I believe my friend Liz and Graham is listening to the show. Is probably will pick up on that. That is
No,
a
quite
very
on the contrary, because everybody that Lindsey Graham has voted for to be on the Supreme Court has gone along with the idea that corporations are human beings, and that the case that came up talking about corporations being covered under the 14th Amendment is a valid decision made by the Supreme Court. So no, Lindsey Graham would not support it. He would not support that position at all. Or anybody
no. I
who
was just
believes in that corporations have the right to do pretty much anything they want to, and whoever's the decision-making body of those corporations should never be held directly accountable for what the corporation does.
no. Actually, I think the issue, if I can bring it back to the original question, it was to know whether this Miss Jackson, Mrs. Jackson was actually she believe that corporation has to be considered as a human being. I think that's the original question. What I was trying to say though, that maybe Senator Graham can hear that, if he's listening to this show, might consider that as a question, because we want to know. We want to know if the judge, in fact, believe that the corporation had to be treated like a human being.
I believe if that was the case, that President Biden would never have appointed her, because President Biden is clearly a person who sides on behalf of large corporations. And so no way would he appoint someone that would say that the corporations could not take the blame for what individuals decide
but I don't
corporation to do.
So how President Biden would know that? You think you have asked Judge Jackson about that question before? Because she's not in a position.
He asked about many other questions, I'm sure. So yes, he should have asked that question. But again, I know that had he believed that, she, in fact, would feel strongly against the ruling that said that corporations should be considered as human beings under the 14th Amendment, the same way African Americans were considered as human beings under the 14th Amendment. Then, in fact, I'm sure he would not have appointed her to the Supreme Court, because he's more interested in protecting the interests of large corporations, and especially the people who, in fact, make decisions on behalf of those corporations, which often is driven by greed rather than about by humanity. And I mean, let's face it, their decisions are often made, as I've
What,
put
what,
the examples
give
about
me give me one example, Paul, because
Oxycontin
okay, yeah,
was,
you
was a drug that many people hooked and got many people becoming heroin addicts in this country. Many people, there were times and times where you saw
but
pictures of
there was
a
no
couple
there
who
were
died
lawsuits
in their
against them.
car with their children in the back seat because they both had gotten addicted to the Oxycontin and to the heroin, and eventually ended up overdosing with their children in the back seat.
Yeah, but you know this has been always from the start the fabric of this country. This is capitalism. You know, we have this capitalistic society that corporations do have a lot of power, but less responsibility, especially when it comes to being able to be responsible for some of the damages that you're talking about. You know, you and me, we usually only deep into politics. I want you to listen up a little bit. I want to bring you to the social, a little bit of the social issue. One of the most pressing social issue that we have recently talking about Will Smith and the slap on that man, Chris Rock. You know, it really sending shockwaves around the globe, knowing that this is two one of the most powerful men or black African American men in the entertainment industry. I don't know what was your feeling about it, and especially this comment coming from him, wife Jada Smith. I was saying she didn't want her husband being the center of attention. Do you think that gesture, what happened on the Oscar the other day, Will Smith getting on the stage and slapping, Chris Rock, two A-list actor in the Hollywood. What was your impression when you saw that?
Well, actually, to be truthful with you, I wasn't watching the Oscar when it happened, but I saw
I know you heard about it,
videos of it after the fact
right?
because I started getting phone calls insisting that I look at what was going on the Oscars.
Yeah.
And so I did see the videotape, and I asked the question that we should be all asking ourselves
Hmm.
is Hollywood. What is the role of Hollywood in the first place? I mean, one of the things that's quite clear is that the Oscars have been losing ratings, TV
Yeah.
ratings, consistently for the last few years.
And what do you think is the reason
And I think that
behind it?
that particular situation all of a sudden now makes it a must see attraction on TV for the next few years when
But
it comes up.
what do you think is the reason behind the fact that Hollywood is losing ratings?
Well, one of the things that's gotten a lot of people upset in the black community is they feel that the way they do their judging is fairly racist. I mean, let's look at out of all the work of an actor such as Denzel Washington, why would they pick the movie that he made talking about drugs, talking about being a gangster cop, to be the one to say that he's now the outstanding actor of the year?
Mm,
When there were so many other portrayals that he did in the movies that I think was much more worthy of that title, that
yeah,
award that he never received.
right.
So we have to ask again, what is kind of image are they trying to push forward
Hmm.
to our community and to the world as to what people of African descent look like?
So are you saying that this was staged?
No, I'm not saying it's staged at all. I think that in fact, uh, obviously, if Will Smith had it to do it over again, he would do it differently.
Yeah,
I think his wife, in her response to the joke,
yeah,
would have responded differently. at the same time.
Right.
But I think that what is really important for us to do is to not get caught up on that hype versus what's really happening in the world that's affecting millions of people right now. Because when you look at the news media right after that show and for the following week, actually, you saw 15 to 20 minutes of a half an hour show talking about the war in Ukraine and another at least 5 minutes talking about the Oscars.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's if there was nothing else happening in the world.
Is that a distraction?
I'm sorry?
Do you think, based on the pressing issue that you just mentioned, the fact that people took so much time to talk about Hollywood, the Oscars, and because that was a pretty good question when you say what's really the role of people making movies, and we have to capture the entire and don't get me wrong, although I think that was not staged, but these people are actors. That's what they do for a living.
Correct.
They go over there and put on fake fights, put on fake stuff. Comedian are not serious when they crack joke. They don't take it. It's not personal. So you see, on one hand, you see an actor, and the other hand, you see a comedian. So
actually, no. Chris Rock has been an actor as well.
Yeah, no.
You see a guy who has been a rapper, a singer, a performer who became an actor, and you've seen a comedian who's also become an actor. And so, yes.
Yeah, so what I'm saying, we see two A-list actors.
It could have been staged or not staged. My point is how on the scale of 1 to 100, how important is that to the lives of the people in this country and the people of this world? A conflict between two individuals where one clearly overreacted and in fact should not have done what he did.
Right.
But when we're looking at the scale of news, how important is that compared to the fact that our government spends over 50% of our tax dollars? Our federal government spends over 50% of our tax dollars on the military. No other country in the world does that. No other country in the world does that. And then you hear our president say that Russia is a bully? Really? Does Russia have 800 military bases outside of the border of Russia? No. Does Russia have 10 military bases outside of the border of Russia? No. But the United States does. And now,
are you changing gears on me? I think we were still on the social, man. We get into Russia. I know.
Well, when you talk about, when you talk about what happened at the Oscars, I think it's very important that we are using our brains to connect dots and say, on the scale of what happened at the Oscar versus what is going on in the world that we live in today, and what is the impact? Because I dare say, with the fuel prices as high as it is today, if it continues on for another 7 or 8 months, you're going to literally have thousands of people freezing to death in this country.
Yeah.
Because there's no way they're going to be able to afford the fuel bill to keep their homes warm. And to me, that is much more important than whether or not a person two individuals have a physical conflict where no one seriously got hurt or killed. And why would our media spend so much time and energy talking about that rather than talking about what would be the impact to so many lives in this country and lives around this world if, in fact, this conflict that we have now going on in Europe is going to force people not to be able to heat their homes.
When you say heat their home, are you talking about Europe or are you talking about America? Because we know.
I'm talking about oil prices.
Yeah,
Europe. Gasoline pump lately.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that Europe, most of those European countries actually depend on they depend on the Russian in the gas and energy system. But as far as the United States is concerned, I don't think we get gas.
No, I'm talking about the cost. I'm talking about the cost inside the United States today has doubled and even gone larger than doubled since the beginning of this conflict. And so it means that for school systems who want to heat the schools in the inner city, many of them heating systems are run off of oil.
Okay.
And so it means that rather than spend money on computers or spend money on microscopes or spend money on books for the students to try to educate them, they're going to have to make the decision, do we keep these students warm or do we try to give them a better education through the things such as the computer, such as the microscopes, such as school books, up-to-date school books?
So Paul, I want you to really address because in the end, people really don't understand the impact of those sanctions, because it looks people really, when they hear about sanctions, they are pretty much think about a soft way, to punish a country, but they don't really see the difficulties that goes behind sanctions. Sometimes it's even worse than a war.
Yes.
A case of Iraq, for example, before Iraq was attacked, they was going through years of sanctions, and that we lost a lot of human beings through those sanctions, because
the people often affected most harshly by that are children.
Yeah. So children and the most vulnerable women and people who are not able, poor people, will suffer the most. So can you speak a little bit about how those sanctions can affect, and now so some nations like Iraq or other nations that are not that powerful, usually when that kind of sanction happen, like Iran, we don't really feel the heat back here at home. But now that a country like give me a second, a country like Russia, with an important potential to sustain itself, and that make also other countries to be dependent on their resources. And I think we started to feel, and I believe even President Joe Biden himself was talking about how those sanctions will be affecting our nation. I want you to say something about that.
Well, one of the things is clear. The reason why Europe has bought so much natural gas and oil, and I'm talking about Western Europe, I'm talking about countries like Germany and France, have bought, and Belgium, have bought so much Russian oil and natural gas, is because it's cheaper to buy it from Russia than it is to buy it from the United States. Now, when they're now being put in a position where they no longer can buy cheaper natural gas or oil, that caused the cost of doing business in those countries to rise. So one has to ask, who then benefits from that? You got Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen making cars that they sell, many of them here in the United States. But if the cost of making those cars rise, then it means then the people in those countries in Europe begin to lose, because they won't have the jobs of making many of the cars that they are now making over there and shipping to the United States for sale, because they're now becoming much more expensive. At the same time, who would benefit from this? Well, obviously, if they can't buy the oil from Russia,
America will sell its oil.
They're buying it from U.S. oil companies who control a lot of the oil coming out of the Middle East and out of the United States.
Here, this question I want to submit to your attention. If, for example, if that happens to be a theory, an acceptable theory that we can call it the military industrial complex or the oil industrial complex, whatever you want to call it. if in fact they have put this plan together to cut off the pipelines that go from Russia to Europe. Let's see if that was the case. Don't you think that, you know, gas or oil coming from the United States will be more expensive
It
to
definitely
European
will be more
countries?
expensive. That's my point I'm making. It will be much more expensive, which would mean the cost of them doing business becomes much more expensive. That cost will be passed on to the products they make. And so it will make the cost of living in Europe much more expensive and much more expensive for them to try to sell their products outside of Europe. The benefactors out of this whole process may be the US oil companies and US natural gas companies, as well as US manufacturers, because in fact, they won't be getting their, people will go to the cheaper cars because they're going to end up having to pay more of their income on fuel here in the United States.
So
So,
how do you explain the fact that European countries, do you think they didn't think about this one? Because I see Germany kind of was in saying that they're not totally gonna go along with the United States.
well,
Do most of these
again,
nations
why,
did they really think about?
why should they? Why should they go along with the United States in the first place?
Well, well,
You know,
in the name of being a good ally, the NATO, the NATO system.
but NATO doesn't address their economic needs. And in fact, what the United States, this whole war and the whole environment of Europe in this war is a basically proxy war by the United States, where the United States gets Europe to take the heat for the war. They get Ukraine taking the heat for the war, when it was made very clear up front that if the United States and Europe stopped pushing for Ukraine being a part of NATO, something that the US had made a commitment to all the way back at the time of the drop of the Berlin Wall, that they would not expand NATO further east. And the question we must ask ourselves is, why is there a need to expand NATO east unless they're trying to threaten Russia? What purpose would it serve to have more European countries east of Germany joining NATO unless it's basically a war plan to contain Russia? All right.
I think that's one of the, you know, is I think that question is so important to ask. But at the same time, I also want to bring you back on the economic side of it. Now that we have sanctioned, people turn off the SWIFT system so that Russia cannot use the international transit of money using the, you know, economic system and banking system, all kind of stuff. Now the Russian trying to also use that to their advantage. President Putin stated clearly that, you know, if European want to get his gas, want to buy from him, they now have to open banks in Russia, and they will have to buy, Russian commodity in ruble and in the Russian, currency. So in long term, those sanctions have made countries like China to rethink about their way to do business. And soon, you know, we've seen Russia and the United States continue to work together. And I believe they will definitely, in long run, come out with a system of exchange that will make them, seriously stay away from the mighty of the dollar, with those petrodollars and all kind of stuff. Do you think this
Well,
calculation in long
again,
run we will lose
I think this
control?
whole operation was very poorly thought out by the U.S. administration, because the fact is that Russia is probably the third largest producer of natural gas and oil in the world today. One of the reasons why the US dollar is so highly valued is that back in the 70s, United States made an agreement with the Middle East that they would only sell their oil to people who bought it in US dollars. So what that did was it increased the value of the US dollar, which had been falling up to that point, and stabilized the US economy. So if you go to Russia today, you probably would find more US dollars in Russia than you would find in Canada or Great Britain, because people who bought the Russian oil paid US dollars. This is one of the reasons why you see so many of the rich from Russia able to come to Europe and the United States and buy very expensive penthouses and yachts and other things, because they have a lot of US dollars. But now let's look at how the United States have reacted to any country that suggests people buying their oil using some other currency than a US dollar.
So you think this is a miscalculation?
I'll give an example. Saddam Hussein made the statement that he would no longer accept US dollars for Iraqi oil. He would only accept Euro dollars.
Yeah, but he got in trouble for that.
And that's when the United States went to war against Saddam Hussein.
But you think that's the only reason?
I think that's a major reason. When you look at Libya, when Libya was trying to create a currency backed by gold for the continent of Africa, basically saying if you want to buy minerals or oil from Africa, you have to buy it on the African currency and not the US dollar, which would have weakened the US dollar. And France blew up and said, oh no, we can't have this happening. And so this is when they moved to take on Muammar Gaddafi.
But that's where I don't understand. If you say that Gaddafi willingly changed the petrodollars into the euro dollar, why is that?
No, I said Saddam Hussein did it.
No, I'm talking about Saddam Hussein. I'm sorry. When Saddam Hussein make that decision, if your argument is correct, say, okay, you know what, we're gonna change. We're not gonna be selling our oil, using the petrodollars or whatever. Let's change to euro dollar. Oil. Use the euro to for the exchange of our oil. So why is that Europe and especially France get mad, get upset?
France got upset with Libya when Libya talked about a total different currency than euro dollars or US dollars. Libya talked about an African dollar that was backed by gold.
Well, he was talking about dinar, right? The dinar, and
I'm saying I talked two different countries. Saddam Hussein in Iraq talked about euro dollars. And when he talked about euro dollars, United States went to war against Saddam Hussein to get him out of power because he made that suggestion. Because they saw a major drop would happen in the value of US dollars. And they would think that other countries may decide to do the same thing. Now, I'm sure Europe would have loved the idea of buying oil and natural gas from Iraq using euro dollars because they were the creators of euro dollars. But the United States wanted no part of that. And that's why they were the ones that led the war inside of Iraq. Now, when Libya and Muammar Gaddafi decided to create a currency for Africa that would be backed by gold, that's when France and the United States went crazy and decided that they wanted to get rid of Muammar Gaddafi the same way the United States wanted to get rid of Saddam Hussein. Because again, they would see a major deflation in the value of US dollars as well as a deflation inside of the euro dollars, because Muammar Gaddafi was not only just encouraging Africa to do that, but he was also encouraging other Arab states throughout the Middle East.
Okay, listen. Let us take a quick break. When we come back, I believe talking about currency, I want to know what you think about this, cryptocurrency. Just in a minute.
Look, leading can be tough, and leading without support, limited resources, an inexperienced team, all while managing work-life balance is even tougher. This is an exclusive opportunity for you to take full advantage of my years of leadership experience and glean from my mentors and all the work that I've done, the learning, the trials, the error, and the growth. You're joining an ecosystem of believers, leaders, thinkers, and doers who are here to support your dreams, celebrate your wins, and encourage your success.
Well, welcome back to Gen Show. The show Talk to Me. I'm here with my friend Paul Pomfrey. Before we went on a break, and we talk about how currencies determine policy, and how because of the currency change, some country get in trouble. You were trying to explain the case of Libya, case of Iraq, and whether you're right or wrong. The bottom line is, currency in the modern time is a serious issue, and the power of dollars, and can be shaken by the fact that major countries like Russia or China, if they starting to make decisions that will definitely change the direction or the power of the dollar, that completely can shift the way we see the economy today. So, talking about currency, I don't know, what's your view? What do you think about cryptocurrency? Do you think this is something that will be can sustain? I mean, that will be the future of money, or this is just something people will speculate, and then later on it's gonna disappear. Something else will pop out.
Well, I think that cryptocurrency has grown a great deal of popularity in the last 4 or 5 years. But I think at the same time that if the U.S. finds it to be a threat to the U.S. dollar, it's shown that it's willing to go to war. Inside of Iraq, inside of Libya, and even inside of Russia or next door to Russia, if necessary. So it can gain a certain amount of popularity, but if like for example, those two people I talked about before that has more wealth than 130 some odd citizens here in the United States combined, if it poses a threat to their wealth as they see it, they will have this government come down on cryptocurrency like there was no tomorrow. I think Mr. Snowden, who happens to be over there in Russia right now, who worked with the NSA, made it very clear that they pay attention to everything done over the internet. And they have pretty much devised a great deal of ways of how to disrupt information. And I would not be surprised if they're not very now spending a lot of time and resources on figuring out how to look at the way cryptocurrency is used today. And if the United States find it to be a threat to the US dollar, I would not be surprised in any way in seeing them move very quickly to destroy it. Now, the question needs to be asked that we need to ask ourselves: if that happens, what do we do then? If we invest 20% of our income or 30% of our income or 10% of our income, can we afford to lose it just by a push of a button onto some electronics mechanism that could wipe out all those accounts or could disrupt all those accounts one way or another? We've seen how people have been able to hack into some of the supposedly the most secure forms of technology known to the world today. Why do you think that the U.S., if they felt a real threat to the U.S. dollar, wouldn't do the same thing to cryptocurrency?
But what makes cryptocurrency, in your opinion, what makes cryptocurrency so attractive? Besides the fact that decentralized, the way money functions,
because it doesn't have Great Britain putting its value on it. Pretty much everything in this world that is dealing with a monetary system, the value of that monetary system is pretty much controlled in Great Britain. And you may have seen some of the late exposés on TV journalism and talking about the different players inside of Great Britain that controls the value of capital around the world. I mean, why should Great Britain set the price for cocoa? Why should they be the price for oil? Why should they be setting the price for many commodities in which they themselves do not even have? You know, they set the price for all these different things they don't have any control over. But there's been like a gentleman agreement between Great Britain and the United States that Great Britain will handle the money markets on the one hand, and on the other hand, the United States will handle the military power around the world. And with them working together with the other original members of NATO, allows them to keep in control of the natural resources that you would find in Africa, the Caribbean, Central America, South America, in many parts of Asia today. And so I don't see where they would allow any real threat to the monetary system they've set up worldwide today. And as long as they feel that they got military superiority, they will do whatever they feel necessary, as they did in Iraq, as they did in Libya, to undermine any economic move that they find a threat to their currencies.
In other way, cryptocurrency is going nowhere, especially if it's a threat for the actual monetary system that we have. Is that your point?
I feel that they will keep it at a certain limit, and it will not allow it to expand to a point where they feel their economic currency is threatened.
Yeah, but how can you stop something you cannot control? Because the crypto is essentially, and part of my question was, why do you think it's so popular? I think the fact that it's decentralized, capacity where nobody's control. We used to if you send money to Africa or from Africa, it would take weeks, and it goes through the pipeline of all of those elements that you just mentioned. The central banks of whatever, England or United States, whatever stuff is. But nowadays with cryptocurrency, and I think it's give more power to the people. That's part of the reason why it's very popular.
Let me put it this way.
How they
it's done over the internet? Is that correct?
Yeah. Go
okay.
Ahead.
All right. Now tell me how many people lost their accounts over the internet in the last 4 months. whether you're talking about Russian RT or whether you're talking whatever, they lost their accounts over the internet, where they no longer, no matter how much they may have paid the server, have access to those accounts anymore. United States can use its military and economic ability to shut down anything they don't want in this country electronically. So what good is cryptocurrency if you cannot process it from this country? That's fairly simple.
Yeah, but
people can invest in it all they want if they want to have to go somewhere else in the world to spend it. But if they make it illegal for it to be done in this country, how many people are ready to go outside this country to spend whatever money they think they can make off of cryptocurrency?
Good point.
And believe me, if they make it illegal in this country, they will use their military might to force so many other countries, especially the NATO countries, to make it illegal as well.
Absolutely.
Because their currency will also be threatened by cryptocurrency.
But this relationship between Russia and China, do you think do you see any success coming out of it?
Well, if one is to pay attention to, for example, the relationship, Russia has good relationship with Cuba. So does China. Russia has very good relationship with Iran. So does China. Russia has very good relationship with Venezuela. So does China. Russia has very good relationship with Nicaragua. So does China. So I'm naming a number of countries that the United States at this point is trying to economically isolate through sanctions. But yet you see a partnership of a continuous relationship, economic relationships with those countries that the United States want to make as a piranha, okay, by the country of Russia as well as the country of China. So the question is, the United States really is not offering very much, especially to the underdeveloped world. What they're offering has more to do with do what we say and how we say it, or else. And that or else has meant that it's opened up a door for countries like Russia, for countries like China. And we must remember one thing. It was the United States who took most of the manufacturing jobs out of the United States and took them over to China. China didn't come over here asking for those jobs. It was the U.S. doing it because they didn't want to pay the labor rate here in the United States for making their products.
Absolutely.
And so they fled to China to do so.
But the President Trump talking about.
Sorry?
I said the former President Trump. He was running on the fact that he was trying to bring jobs from China to the United States. Do you think it was successful for doing that? It was successful for bring the American job from China or maybe from Asia to the United States, or that was just political talk?
Well, a lot of things that President China and President Biden have said is political talk. And the problem is that both presidents have gotten people to buy into their political talk with no concrete practice to follow up with their talks. And I find it very unfortunate today, now that we have President Biden, to see how many people are allowing themselves to be duped into believing that President Biden offers a better alternative for the people of this country.
But do you really think President Trump did Did they because he said he didn't lose the election, and now apparently it's coming out. There was an article on Newsweek. Trump is saying finally admitting he admits finally that he lost the election. So all of this time, do you think he knew the truth and he was just trying to mislead trying to mislead the people that voted, his supporters? Why now?
Well, I think why now is because there are several court cases that are getting ready to force President Trump to address a lot of things that he's been accused of doing illegally in this country. And who knows if he's not cut a deal to publicly state that he lost the election or not.
You think there's a deal behind it?
I think it's clear that most people recognize that there's been a number of people now who have testified before the committee of 1-6. There has been a number of cases in New York brought by the state's attorney as well as by the district attorney out of New York City against the Trump and his family. And so who knows what kind of deals are being cut behind the doors, closed doors, with the shades pulled down.
Absolutely.
So my point is, whether he agrees or doesn't agree whether he won the election, in my opinion, I don't see Trump as any more of a threat than that of Biden right now, because Biden has done things.
So what do you mean by a threat?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by a threat?
Okay. Whether Trump ends up being president in this country again or not, I don't see him as any more of a threat to the future of this country than that of Joseph Biden. We got right now Joseph Biden playing games with the second most powerful nuclear power in the world. And if by chance there's any misreading takes place between the United States and the second most powerful nuclear power, this world will come to an end.
But do you think there's some kind of frustration? Because I see, Business Insider talking about, they say Putin tells the Western countries their sanctions will lead to food shortage in the poorest region in the world. Do you think these men have been trying to maybe speak reason to European? He himself is a European, but do you think some so-called allies or NATO's country? Do you think they've been starving or refuse to listen to these men?
Let's be clear. When we talk about the poorest regions in the world, what part of the world is this poorest region in? Africa, the Caribbean, Central America, South America, and parts of Asia.
Right.
Now, most of those countries are near the equator, which means what? Which means they can grow food year around.
Mm-hmm.
So why are they importing food in the first place?
There we go.
Okay, and who's been in control of these countries that have prevented them from growing their own food? I'll give you an example. The Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Mm-hmm.
With the amount of rainfall it has and the amount of fertile land it has, it could feed 9 billion people a year. The population of this world is 7 billion. So the question needs to be asked, how come the Congo, the DRC, is importing so much of its food today?
So the food shortage.
U.S. policy in the Congo. You must look at U.S. policy in the Congo.
Wait a minute, Paul. Do you think that's a situation if African leaders, if they have the kind of mindset that you have, understanding that this is probably an opportunity to change, their policy and the way?
I was getting ready to get to your point.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's look at the Congo. They elect a prime minister in 1960. He wasn't even in office for 6 months before the United States, along with their European allies, killed him, and then put his body in acid. And so the Democratic Republic of the Congo has not had an elected government that the actual people themselves voted for since 1960. You had Mobutu there for 32 years. Then you had Laurent Kabila come in there from 1967 all the way up until 2001. And then you have Joseph Kabila come into power. Okay, and how did Laurent Kabila get there? United States, using its two surrogates, and that is the military of Rwanda and the military of Uganda, brought him to power. But why did they bring him to power? Because they wanted to rob the minerals of coltan, cobalt, and tin out of the eastern part of the Congo. And because of that, they figured Mobutu, who they had put in power, was be too greedy. And if he had any idea how valuable those minerals were, he would be no way allow them to take it from the country without giving him his fair share cut as he saw it. And so they told Mobutu he had to leave the country. And when he didn't leave the country, they orchestrated the armies of Uganda and Rwanda to come into the country, which the United States, by chance, actually flew those militaries to the central part of the Congo to push Mobutu out of power. Now, people step back and say, well, how would you make such an accusation as that?
Yeah, I mean, that was the question I was about to ask.
I'm going to explain how I make that accusation. Because they did the exact same thing when Laurent Kabila told Rwanda and Uganda they had to take their military back home and leave the Congo in 1998. That they flew those militaries again back into the Congo, in the central part of the Congo, to kill Laurent Kabila. Now, Laurent Kabila did something quite smart. He picked up the phone. He called the president of Zimbabwe, at the time Robert Mugabe. He called up the president of Namibia, Sam Nujoma, and he called up the president of Angola, President Santos, and asked for military assistance. Zimbabwe sent its air force, Namibia sent its troops, as well as the Angola sent their troops. And they quickly defeated the military of Uganda and Rwanda. When they did that, one of my close friends I had been worked with since 1975 was a gentleman by the name of Theo Ben Guerrero, who happened to be the foreign minister of Namibia at the time. He told me personally that after they defeated the troops, he and the foreign minister of Zimbabwe were meeting to try to figure out how to get these troops back home, because under international law, they were responsible for these defeated troops until they got them back to their home. When they get a phone call from a woman by the name of Madeleine Albright. Now, some of your listeners may have heard of who Madeleine Albright is. Now, we're talking here 1998. So the president at that time was a guy by the name of William Jefferson Clinton. And she's calling, asking for air rights, since Zimbabwe had its air force there, asking for air rights so that the U.S. could send their transport planes back into the Congo to take the troops of Uganda and Rwanda back home. So again, here's an example of how the United States, behind the scenes, uses surrogate military, that of Rwanda and Uganda, to carry out their military actions to undermine democracy in Africa. And what was that democracy? They did not want the Congo to gain the necessary capital it needed to develop itself. They must be fair to have the Congolese people live in poverty, squandering poverty and misery, so that they could steal the minerals out of that country at a very cheap rate.
So now, giving, because this is a lot of deep information to process, especially for for the list of trained minds that are watching this show. My thing is, I just wanted to come back here, knowing this history, and certainly this events take place in Africa, so African people really understand what's going on. In the light of what's going on right now between Russia and Ukraine, and we read together how Putin is actually telling the European countries how this is going to turn out if they don't put their act together. It's going to have a lot of damages down the line, and the food shortage is really is a serious issue. Already, some poor countries already suffer from it. Given this war, we have already seen wheat missing in some countries, because countries like Ukraine do produce a lot of wheat that goes to Africa as well. But you just mentioned the fact that Africa that technically doesn't need to export and to import anything from any country. We have rainforest, we have a fertile soil that can produce almost every single thing that could possibly exist, and then we have natural resources that can power the everything that we can possibly imagine, computer and all kind of stuff. So the idea of importing from Europe is just one of the silly one. But given the situation right now, Africa can just sit back and say, this is probably an opportunity for us to do like Chinese people are doing or Russians are doing. There's a situation here we have to think fast and quick and good so that we can prevent this kind of stuff from happening. Because it makes no sense to have water and fish and still, starve to death.
Well, I think it makes sense. Right here in the United States, there are many people who consider themselves as African-centered.
Yeah.
And yet, they tend not to look at what is necessary to help Africa become economically independent. In fact, many of them who consider themselves African-centered are looking at Africa as a way of how they can be able to become rich themselves, often at the expense of African people.
Right.
And I strongly say that we should really rethink that, because if we help the economies of Africa, we help our own economy as well right here at home.
Right.
You look at the fact that Europe used the Europeans that went to North America as a means of generating and boosting their own economy, because how did Europe make a lot of money off of North America? From cotton. That their textile industries flourished off of cotton coming out of the United States. And so clearly, we as people of African descent in this country need to rethink, how can we use our experience here that could truly help the development of Africa, and in return could really truly help the development of our economy in our African communities here in the United States. Right. I think too often we take the philosophies of our enemies as our own, and then wonder why Africa is not developing the way it should. I think that we rethink, how do we use, we're here where all the technology is.
Right.
So why are we taking advantage of learning that technology? That's what China did.
Right.
When the United States set up factories in China, China took that money that they made off of manufacturing and sent their top students to every major university throughout Europe, United States, Canada.
But one other thing, Paul, and I'm not trying to cut you off, because this is essentially a conversation of the future. I'm a product of that kind of transaction. Although the way I got here was not what maybe people didn't think the way you're thinking right now. But somebody like me, came into this country, been go on to one of the top schools in the country, get education, but often people back to my homeland, they sometimes they're not happy for me to come back home. Now the conversation in that so-called intellectual circle, in the African intellectual circle, that believe that America will gain more in working with folks like myself, instead of just continue to support those gangsters back home that continue to steal from their own people. Why not support somebody that understand or can have that kind of relationship that benefit both sides, instead of just continue to.
Let's put it this way. Let's look at it from this perspective. You look at Dr. Johnson, who graduated from Harvard University and became the president of Liberia.
Okay.
How did she improve the economy of Liberia? She didn't.
Okay.
Then you look at the football player who's now the president of Liberia and played football. Yes, he played football throughout Europe, and he came back. How has he improved the economy of Liberia? He didn't.
So, are you comparing me? Are you comparing me to those people?
I'm sorry.
Or you think I'm the same as the people that
Well,
you
I'm
mentioned?
saying that to say this: once these people get into power, then the pressure comes on them from Europe and the United States to say you do A, B, C, or D, and if you don't, we'll take you out. Okay. It happened with Charles Taylor. As long as Charles Taylor was doing what the United States wanted, he stayed in power.
But how do you explain Kagame, which is somebody that have also good a relationship with the United States?
I explain very easily. Paul Kagame's done everything that the big corporations of the United States wanted him to do.
Yeah, but
his main role was to use his military to go in and kill people on top of land that had valuable resources underneath of it, so that the U.S. corporations and European corporations could come into the Congo and claim, can I not mine here because no one's living here now? Paul Kagame and his military is a major participant in killing over 6 million Congolese in 10 years. And 3 million of them were children below the age of 5. Now, you're suggesting that's the kind of leader you want to become.
No.
You want to become a man who carries out genocide inside of Africa? Is that who you're trying to compare yourself to?
But what?
Paul Kagame?
But listen, the Kagame is not the only person that is back up support by America. We also have Arab countries. No. Let me. You made your point, Paul. Let me make mine. I think there's a possibility, because we here in America, there's some evil corporation that there's also good corporations. There's some good leaders and there's some bad leaders.
Please show me
let me finish, Paul. Let me finish. I give you my side.
I'm asking for show me some examples.
I'll give you some. Okay, let's talk about Saudi Arabia, for example.
Who?
Okay, I'm taking a country that historically I've been working with the West and the United States in particular. United States, protect military, do business with Saudi Arabia, but Saudians are not going left and right and do what Kagame is doing. So what I'm trying to say here is that.
Excuse me. Are you familiar with a country called Yemen?
Yeah, but Yemen is not.
Do you know how many people have lost their lives because of Saudi Arabia bombing hospitals and schools and communities in Yemen?
But are you saying that they're doing this stuff? They are proxy killers for the United States?
Who's supplying them the logistics to allow them to do it?
Well, I mean, but Saudi
Arabia could not carry out the bombing raids without refueling their aircraft. And what army, what military, what air force is refueling their aircraft? United States. The United States is the one doing that. So to step back and talk about Saudi Arabia, show me where the real human rights are respected inside of Saudi Arabia today.
Well, I mean,
How many people being beheaded?
My thing
Saudi
is,
Arabia today.
My thing is, if you talk about human, that is prior. The system, the social system that is in Saudi Arabia, didn't wait for America to have a deal, oil deal with them to change to that. They already have the system in place. The American came and find them already behaving the way they were behaving. So my thing is, no,
Saudi Arabia on steroids. I'm sorry, but we put Saudi Arabia on steroids.
I think it's too easy. It's too easy for us to just put the blame on the United States. Countries and the leaders have some kind of responsibility as well, and that's what I'm trying to convey here.
Okay,
that
countries that have the highest amount of oil business inside of Saudi Arabia today. Which country is number one?
What in terms of
in terms of oil business inside of Saudi Arabia today, what country is number one?
I think Saudi Arabia, you have Iran, you have
no. I'm saying inside of Saudi Arabia today, doing business. Yeah. What country has the highest amount of oil business inside of Saudi Arabia today?
I mean, beside America, I don't know.
Well, you said besides. So you're saying United States is number one?
Yes.
Okay. So you got this country is Saudi Arabia is number one as far as United States doing business with them. All right. And then let's look at what they've done. They have carried out genocide inside of Yemen and still carrying out genocide inside of Yemen. And we should assume you're suggesting that we should think that the people's lives of Yemen are not important enough to say that Saudi Arabia is wrong in what they're doing and that they're doing it with the help of U.S. military?
First of all, why is Saudi Arabia attacking Yemen or creating so much suffering? What's the issue? So that the viewers can understand what's going on.
Basically, what Saudi Arabia has taken a position on, from my understanding, is that they feel that Yemen has too many radicals, supposedly, inside of Yemen, and that the fact that the former government of Yemen was overthrown, which was a lackey government to the government of Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia wants to make an example of Yemen, that if you're over in the Middle East and you're anywhere near Saudi Arabia, your government better bow down to Saudi Arabia or else. And so it's something that U.S. military contractors love because Saudi Arabia is steady buying missiles and bombs and jet parts from Saudi Arabia, from the United States, to carry out this war. As they blow up hospitals, schools, residential communities, there's no off limits to them bombing inside of Yemen. And I don't know of any international human rights organization that hasn't pointed out war crimes that Saudi Arabia has been carrying out inside of Yemen.
But now explain to me, Paul.
Yes.
Explain to me why it is easy for, some African leaders to get in trouble when they do some act that go around and do the same thing that even less sometimes that those so-called American allies are doing, and they get away with murders literally. And why is the country like?
Give me an example, and I'll try to address it. Give me an example of what you're talking about.
I think Charles Taylor get in trouble. Mm-hmm. There's another one we've seen on the French side. Seen somebody like Bagbo was put in prison for, I don't even know the reason why. He went to the ICC It's a bunch of them. I think
let's
even
go back
in
to
Europe.
Let's go back to Charles Taylor. Samuel Doe wore out.
By the way, you're just probably gonna be the last statement. We have 1 minute left.
Okay.
Make your statement.
Okay,
and then
I'll tell you quick. Samuel Doe wore out his welcome in the United States, who was the president before Charles Taylor. Now, here's a look at the history of Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was thrown in jail inside of Liberia, and he escaped. He comes to the United States. He's thrown in jail in the United States, and he escapes. And he ends up back in West Africa with enough money to carry out a war against Samuel Doe. Now, where did that money come from? Who supported him to do that? And once he took over the government and killed Samuel Doe, once he took over the government inside of Liberia, the United States said, okay, now it's time for you to pay us back for what we gave you. So he had two options: either take the resources out of Liberia or take it out of a government next door to Liberia that was having its own political problems, which was Sierra Leone. And so he decided, hey, we'll go after the diamonds in Sierra Leone. And so he's now reaping the diamonds out of Sierra Leone. Of course, the United States was just totally confused as to why this war was going on inside of Sierra Leone, where literally thousands of people were losing their lives. But then he made a major mistake. Chevron Oil approached Charles Taylor's government and said, we would like to drill oil right off your shores. And we will tell you how much oil we're taking out of our platform and pay you royalties on the oil. And Charles Taylor said, oh, no. I will have my man on your platform, and I'll have him tell me how much oil you're taking out of your platform. And Chevron said, no, that's not the way we operate. Now, who was on the board of Chevron before she started working at the White House? A woman by the name of Condoleezza Rice. In fact, Chevron had named one of their oil tankers Connie. And so Chevron obviously used their pull to say Charles Taylor's not cooperating. At the same time, the lease for the rubber plantations that Firestone had was running out. So lo and behold, here comes the U.S. Marines coming in to get Charles Taylor out of power inside of Liberia. And when the government came down, before they brought in Dr. Johnson as the new president, they cut a new deal for Liberia's rubber farms with Firestone. It wasn't a very beneficial deal for Liberia, but it was very beneficial for Firestone. So I suggest people check my facts.
Yeah, of course they will. We're gonna leave that right there, Mr. Paul Pomfrey, the one and the only. Listen, my brother. Now I understand why so many people they just want you to come back on the show. That was a great show. There's no limit to what this brother can put out. You better come and watch when he's on the air. Hey, Paul Pomfrey, this is our political analyst on Gain Show. It was a good show. Good to see you again, my friend. Look forward to seeing you another time. And listen, continue to educate and make sure that whatever you say, it's going to be double checking. People will come back and check you out. So make sure your facts are correct.
I encourage them to especially check the ones I said about what happened with Charles Taylor.
Absolutely. All right. Listen, now conclude our show for tonight. The man is Paul Pomfrey. Yeah. And look forward to speak with you another time, my brother. Take care of yourself.
All right.
All right.